There exists a cruel and invisible law that governs the lives of empaths, a law that defies all logic and reason, emerging from the darkest depths of the human psyche. You have already felt this, though you may not have known how to name it. It is the painful paradox of feeling most exhausted precisely by those you most desire to help. Why is it that the soul that gives, that heals, that opens without reserve, often finds itself drained by the very ones it seeks to save? Why are those who most need our light the ones who most consume it, leaving us empty and questioning our own nature? This is not coincidence. It is not bad luck or cruel fate. It is an alchemical reality woven into the deepest dynamics of the collective unconscious. As I once said, empathy is not simply a personality trait. It is a manifestation of what I call the self, the totality of all psychic contents, both conscious and unconscious. When someone is truly empathic, they are not merely feeling the emotions of others or deciphering the invisible language of energy. They are allowing themselves to become a channel through which the collective unconscious can express itself. Such a person becomes luminous not because they try to be, but because the very act of openness creates a field of consciousness that others feel in ways they cannot articulate. And yet, there is a terrible price to be paid for such light. For where there is light, shadow sharpens its claws. You may have noticed this. When you offer genuine help, when you open your heart to someone in need, something strange happens. The more you give, the more they seem to need. The more you heal, the more wounds appear. It is as if your very compassion becomes a magnet for the unresolved pain of the world. What is happening here operates at the deepest levels of the psyche. When you, as an empath, encounter someone in suffering, you are not merely interacting with their conscious personality. You are encountering their unintegrated complexes, their ancestral wounds, their collective shadow. And these shadow aspects of the psyche are like black holes. They consume light without ever being completely satisfied. Consider the archetype of the wounded healer. This is often the role that the empath unconsciously assumes. You feel deeply, not because life has spared you from pain, but because you have known suffering in forms that left invisible scars. Your capacity for empathy was born from navigating through your own darkness. And it is precisely this wisdom born from pain that others sense and seek. But herein lies the cruel paradox. Those who most need healing are often those least prepared to receive it in a healthy way. They approach you not as students ready to grow, but as empty vessels seeking to be filled. They sense your light, and in their unconscious desperation, try to suck all of it for themselves. This creates what I call the savior complex in the empath. You begin to unconsciously believe that it is your responsibility to carry everyone's pain, that your value is tied to your capacity to heal others. This belief, however noble it may seem, becomes a psychological trap that attracts exactly the type of person who will drain your energy without offering anything in return. Imagine a deep and crystalline well. This well is your empathic essence, pure, nourishing, capable of quenching the deepest thirst. Now imagine people coming to this well. Some come with their own cups, drink with gratitude, and go on their way. Others, however, arrive as cracked vessels. No matter how much you pour, they never fill. And in their unconsciousness, they keep asking for more, not realizing that they are drying up the very well that came to save them. This dynamic is not conscious. The person draining you is not deliberately trying to exhaust you. They are operating from deeply rooted unconscious complexes. Perhaps they grew up believing that love must be earned through suffering. Perhaps they learned that being vulnerable is the only way to receive attention. Or perhaps they carry wounds so deep that any amount of healing seems insufficient. But you, the empath, often fail to recognize these patterns. Instead, you interpret their constant need as evidence that you are not doing enough. You redouble your efforts, give even more of yourself, thinking that eventually you will be able to fill their void. But this is a fundamental misunderstanding. You are trying to heal from outside in something that can only be healed from inside out. The unconscious of those who drain your energy is operating from what I call the eternal orphan complex. This complex causes the person to remain psychologically in an infantile position, always seeking a parental figure who will save them from their responsibilities and pain. When they find an empath, their psyche whispers, "Finally, someone who will save me." And you, moved by your compassionate nature, often unconsciously assume this parental role. You become the recipient of their projections, the savior they have always sought. But in doing so, you inadvertently prevent them from growing, from facing their own shadows, from developing their own inner strength. This pattern creates a vicious cycle. The more you save, the more they need to be saved. The more you carry, the more weight they place upon you. And slowly, imperceptibly, you begin to resent them, not consciously, but somewhere deep in your psyche. This resentment, in turn, creates guilt, because empaths often believe they should not feel anger for helping others. The psychological truth is that you cannot heal anyone who is not ready to face their own shadow. You can offer support, understanding, compassion, but the real journey of healing must be undertaken by them alone. When you try to do for them what only they can do for themselves, you are not offering true healing. You are offering dependence. There is also your own shadow to consider. As an empath, you may have developed what I call the compassionate superiority complex. Somewhere deep, you may believe that your capacity to feel and help makes you more evolved, more spiritual, more valuable than others. This unconscious belief can make you feel compelled to continuously prove your worth through sacrifice. But this is not true compassion. It is ego disguised as altruism. And those who drain your energy can sense this unconsciously. They perceive that you need to be needed as much as they need to be saved. This codependent dynamic benefits both at an unconscious level, but prevents genuine growth for both parties. Consider fairy tales and ancient myths. The true hero is not the one who saves others from their journeys, but the one who inspires them to undertake their own heroic journeys. The true healer is not the one who removes all pain, but the one who teaches others how to transform their pain into wisdom. You may be wondering, how then can I help without exhausting myself? How can I maintain my compassionate nature without becoming a vessel for everyone's unresolved pain? The answer lies in what I call conscious compassion. This is the ability to feel deeply without losing yourself in the feeling, to love without merging, to help without taking responsibility for the outcomes.
Conscious compassion requires that you develop what Buddhists call non-attachment and what I call detached participation. You can be completely present for someone's pain without making it your own pain. You can offer your support without becoming dependent on their gratitude or progress. This requires a fundamental shift in how you see your role as an empath. You are not here to save anyone. You are here to witness, to reflect, to offer a different perspective. Like a clean mirror, you can show others aspects of themselves that they cannot see alone, but you are not responsible for what they do with that reflection. It is also crucial that you learn to recognize the signs of energetic vampirism. Some people approach empaths not out of a genuine quest for growth, but out of an unconscious need to suck vital energy. They may be charming, charismatic, even seemingly spiritual, but there are telltale signs. They often present dramatic crises that demand immediate attention. Their stories are always about how they are victims of circumstances beyond their control. They rarely take real responsibility for their situations. And most importantly, after interactions with them, you feel drained, confused, or emotionally unbalanced. These people are not necessarily bad. They are often wounded people operating from unconscious complexes. But recognizing these patterns is essential for your own psychic preservation. You can have compassion for them without sacrificing yourself for them. The development of healthy, energetic boundaries is not cruelty, it is psychological necessity. As I once said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. If you feel constantly drained by certain people, ask yourself, what unconscious complex in me is being activated? What unrecognized need am I trying to fulfill through this dynamic? Often, you will discover that your need to be needed is being exploited. Your identity may have become so intertwined with your role as healer that you fear who you would be without it. This is a subtle but real prison. You become addicted to the feeling of being indispensable, even when it exhausts you. The journey of individuation for the empath involves learning to separate your essential identity from your role as healer. You are not just the one who heals. You are a complex and multifaceted soul with your own needs, desires, and growth journey. This may seem frightening at first. If you are not the healer, the savior, the always available one, then who are you? This identity crisis is actually a sign of healthy growth. It is indicating that you are beginning to move beyond the limiting roles you have assumed. The mature empath understands that true compassion sometimes appears cruel on the surface. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is allow someone to face the consequences of their choices. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give is your absence, forcing them to find their own inner strength. This does not mean becoming cold or disconnected. It means learning the difference between empathy and emotional entanglement. True empathy is clear, conscious, and chosen. Entanglement is unconscious, compulsive, and often destructive to both parties. When you develop this clarity, something interesting happens. You stop attracting people who want to drain you and begin attracting people genuinely interested in growth. Your energy becomes more focused, more potent, more effective. Paradoxically, by helping fewer people indiscriminately, you actually help more people meaningfully. The archetype of the wise healer is different from the wounded healer. The wise healer has integrated his own wounds and developed discernment. They know when to help and when to step away. They understand that not every person who asks for help is actually ready for change. This wisdom often comes through the painful experience of having been repeatedly drained. It is as if life forced you to learn these boundaries through exhaustion. But once you learn the lessons, you can help other empaths develop discernment earlier in their journeys. Remember that you have a responsibility not only to those you help, but to yourself. Your empathic energy is a precious resource, not infinite. It needs to be protected, nurtured, and used wisely. Like the gardener who must tend the garden so that it can feed many, you must tend your own soul so that it can continue to offer healing to the world. The process of learning healthy boundaries may awaken you guilt. You may hear internal voices saying you are being selfish, that you are betraying your nature. These voices often come from childhood conditioning or cultural complexes about sacrifice and goodness. But listen more deeply, and you will hear a wiser voice, the voice of your own soul asking to be honored. There is a profound difference between self-care and selfishness. True selfishness is unconscious. The selfish person has no awareness of the impact of their actions on others. But you, as an empath, are painfully aware of others' feelings. When you choose to care for yourself, you are making a conscious choice based on wisdom, not unconsciousness. In fact, when you take good care of your own energy, you become a more powerful example for others. You demonstrate that it is possible to be compassionate without being a martyr. You show that healthy boundaries can coexist with genuine love. The empath who has learned these lessons becomes a beacon of possibility for other empaths still trapped in cycles of exhaustion. Your own healing journey becomes a map that others can follow. But remember, even this knowledge must be applied with discernment. There is no single formula that works for all situations. Each encounter requires you to tune into your own inner wisdom and make choices based on awareness of the present moment. The development of this inner wisdom is what I call the individuation of the empath. It is the process of integrating all parts of yourself, including the parts that want to give infinitely and the parts that need protection and care. It is learning to honor both your compassionate nature and your basic human needs. This is a path that requires courage because it means sometimes disappointing people who have become accustomed to receiving unlimited energy from you. It means facing your own shadow, the parts of you that feel superior through giving, that become addicted to the feeling of being indispensable. But it is also a path of freedom. When you are no longer compulsively saving others, you have space to discover who you really are beyond your caretaker roles. You can explore your own dreams, your own passions, your own growth journey. And paradoxically, when you stop trying to heal everyone, your presence becomes naturally more healing. When you are no longer desperately trying to prove your worth through sacrifice, your energy becomes more stable, more nourishing, more sustainable. The world needs conscious empaths, people who can feel deeply without losing themselves in feeling, who can love without merging, who can give without emptying themselves. You can be one of these people. But first, you must learn to value your own soul as much as you value the souls of those you seek to help.
There is an image that often comes to my mind when I think of this journey of transformation. It is the image of the wise tree, with deep roots that extend to the darkest layers of the earth, but with branches that stretch toward the light. This tree does not fear the darkness from which it draws nourishment, nor is it ashamed of the light it seeks. It knows that both are necessary for its growth. The conscious empath is like this tree. Their roots are firmly planted in the reality of their own needs, boundaries, and wounds. They do not deny their darkness or pretend to be beyond the human condition. At the same time, their branches extend in genuine compassion, offering shade and shelter to those who are ready to receive. But note, the tree does not uproot itself to rescue every wounded animal. It remains rooted, offering what it can from its stable position. When the empath learns this wisdom, something profound transforms in their way of helping. There is a phenomenon I have repeatedly observed in my clinical practice. Those who drain empaths' energy often carry what I call primary abandonment wounds. These wounds, usually originating in early childhood, create a psychic void that seems insatiable. The child who did not receive consistent attention develops a complex that makes them believe they must create drama or crisis to receive love. When this person grows up and encounters an empath, their psyche unconsciously recognizes an opportunity. Here is someone who responds to pain, who comes running when there is a crisis. And so, unconsciously, the person learns to perpetuate states of crisis to maintain the empath's attention. This is not conscious manipulation. It is an unconscious pattern developed as a survival strategy in childhood. But recognizing this is crucial for the empath because it explains why their attempts to heal this person often fail. You are not dealing just with a current problem, but with a rooted complex that has been reinforced for decades. The empath, in turn, may have their own corresponding complex. Perhaps you grew up in a family where your sensitivity was the only thing that brought peace to family chaos. Perhaps you learned early on that your value was tied to your ability to feel and respond to others' emotional needs. This conditioning creates what I call the savior empath complex. You feel unconsciously responsible for the emotional well-being of everyone around you. When someone is suffering, your psyche automatically activates fix mode, even when the situation is not yours to fix. The interaction between these two complexes, the abandonment wound and the savior empath, create a destructive psychological dance. The more you try to heal, the more dependent the other person becomes. The more dependent they become, the more needed and validated you feel. It is a vicious circle that benefits both complexes but prevents genuine growth for both parties. Breaking this cycle requires what I call conscious awakening. This means developing the ability to observe your own patterns without judgment, but also without allowing them to control your actions. You begin to notice when your savior complex is being activated and can choose a more conscious response. This conscious choice is what differentiates the mature empath from the unconscious empath. The unconscious empath reacts automatically to distress signals. The mature empath pauses, breathes, and asks, "Is this my pain to carry? Is this my journey to complete? Or am I being called simply to witness and offer compassion without getting involved?" Often the most compassionate response is not to intervene directly. It is to offer presence without trying to fix. It is to validate the person's pain without taking responsibility for removing it. This kind of compassion may seem cold to those accustomed to being saved, but it is actually much more respectful and empowering. When you stop trying to save others, you force them to confront their own inner strength. You invite them to develop internal resources that have always been there, but that remain dormant because someone always appeared to do the work for them. This can be initially uncomfortable for both parties. The person accustomed to being saved may feel abandoned or rejected. You may feel guilty or cruel. But this discomfort is often the beginning of true healing for both. There is also the phenomenon of what I call the new consciousness test. When you begin to establish healthier boundaries, those accustomed to draining your energy will unconsciously intensify their requests for help. It is as if their psyche senses that you are becoming less available and tries to pull you back into the old patterns. These tests may appear in the form of more dramatic crises, more intense emotional appeals, or even accusations that you have become cold or insensitive. It is crucial to understand that this is a natural part of the process. Your consistency during this phase will determine whether you can establish new, healthier patterns. The empath who understands these patterns develops what I call detoxified compassion. This is compassion free from neurotic complexes, free from the need to be needed, free from the compulsion to save. It is compassion that comes from a place of inner abundance, not inner emptiness seeking to be filled. This detoxified compassion is actually much more powerful than codependent compassion. It comes from a solid center and can therefore be offered more sustainably. It does not waver based on others' reactions because it does not depend on external validation to exist. When you operate from this conscious compassion, you naturally stop attracting energy vampires. Your energy becomes less sticky. People can no longer cling to you parasitically. This does not mean you become insensitive. It means you become selective. You begin to attract people who are genuinely interested in growth, not just in being carried. Your relationships become more reciprocal, more balanced, more nourishing for both parties. Paradoxically, by becoming less useful in the codependent sense, you become truly more useful. The development of this empathic maturity often requires confronting deep fears. The fear of being rejected if you are not constantly useful. The fear of discovering that you are not as good as you thought you were. The fear that your value is truly only tied to your capacity to serve others. These fears often have roots in early childhood. Perhaps you learned that love was conditional, based on how well you could meet others' emotional needs. Perhaps your family only paid attention to you when you were taking care of someone or solving problems. Healing these original patterns is essential for developing mature relationships. It requires that you learn to value yourself independently of your usefulness to others. It requires that you develop a sense of identity that goes beyond being the one who helps. This healing process can awaken what I call the empath identity crisis. If you are not defined by your ability to feel and heal others' pain, then who are you? This question can be frightening, but it is also liberating.
You begin to discover parts of yourself that were hidden under the healer role. Perhaps you have artistic talents you neglected because you were too busy caring for others. Perhaps you have dreams and ambitions you set aside because they seemed selfish. Perhaps you have aspects of your personality you suppressed because they did not seem compassionate enough. The integration of these denied parts of yourself is a crucial part of the individuation process for the empath. You learn that you can be compassionate and assertive, sensitive and strong, helpful and independent. These are not contradictions, they are complements that create a more complete and balanced personality. As you integrate these aspects, your ability to help others actually expands, but in a completely different way. Instead of offering only emotional support, you can offer a living model of how it is possible to be sensitive without being a victim, how it is possible to care for others without losing yourself. Your own healing journey becomes a map that other empaths can follow. Your ability to establish healthy boundaries inspires others to do the same. Your refusal to be drained gives permission for other empaths to also protect their energy. This is a much more sustainable and powerful form of healing. Instead of saving individuals one by one, often only temporarily, you contribute to the collective evolution of empathic consciousness. You help raise the standard of how empaths relate to the world. The conscious empath understands that their sensitivity is a precious resource, not just for themselves, but for the human collective. In an age where the world is divided by lack of empathy, you carry a precious capacity to bridge different human experiences. But this bridge can only be sustainable if you build it on solid foundations. These foundations are your own well-being, your own integrity, your own growth journey. When you neglect these foundations to help others, you eventually collapse, benefiting no one. Think of the empath as a lighthouse. A lighthouse does not sail out to rescue lost ships that would take it to the rocks. Instead, it remains firmly anchored in place, emitting a constant and reliable light that others can use to navigate safely. When you learn to be this kind of lighthouse, stable, consistent, illuminating, but not intrusive, you discover that you can actually help more people more meaningfully. Your own stability becomes a reference point for others who are lost in the storm of their own emotions. This transformation from codependent empath to conscious empath does not happen overnight. It is a process that requires patience, self-compassion, and often professional help. You may discover unconscious patterns dating back generations, family complexes that have been passed down through lineages. But each step in this journey makes you not just a healthier individual, but also a more effective contributor to humanity's collective healing. Every time you consciously choose not to absorb someone's pain, you are modeling a new form of compassion. Every time you establish a healthy boundary, you are teaching others that this is possible. Your sensitivity is not a weakness to be overcome, but a gift to be refined. Like a precious stone that needs to be cut to reveal its true beauty, your empathic nature needs to be shaped by wisdom and discernment to become truly powerful. In the end, those who most drain your energy are your most powerful teachers. They force you to develop boundaries, to clarify your values, to consciously choose where to invest your precious empathic energy. Through them, you learn that true compassion sometimes requires saying no, that genuine love can include allowing others to face their own journeys. This is the alchemy of the mature empath, transforming the tendency to lose yourself in others into the capacity to find yourself through others. It is learning that you can be deeply compassionate without sacrificing yourself, deeply loving without losing yourself, deeply useful without exhausting yourself. When you master this alchemy, you become not just a more effective healer, but a living model of how it is possible to navigate the world with an open heart without allowing that heart to be constantly wounded. And perhaps that is the greatest gift you can offer, not just your ability to heal, but your demonstration that it is possible to be empathic and strong, compassionate and wise, loving and protected at the same time.